Hello and welcome to More Than a Game, a podcast about the Premier League, A-League and more. My name's Tommie C. This week on the pod, Sturridge's arrival spices up this week's full stop / league soft launch. Andros TownSIUUU pays his respects to his idol. Sheriff Tiraspol shocks the wild west of Europe. Woo versus South Melbourne Stadium stoush comes to a conclusion. Who won? Who lost? We'll find out shortly. And most importantly, our September More Than a Game FPL prize giveaway. This week on the pod, I'm joined by Damo and Killian. Killian, you just had your first. You made your debut playing AFL up in Darwin, of all places. How did you go in the heat today?
Excellent. Yeah, I'm playing for the mighty Waratah Warriors. They play a brand new sponsor this year, is the casino across the road. So I'm trying to get a bit of revenue from the boys after a big win.
Oh, that's great.
You know exactly where everyone is going after the game, right?
yeah. So it was a lot of fun, and I've actually just finished my lucky to be in Darwin. We've had the sports has not really been interrupted, so my soccer football season that's just finished up. We unfortunately lost in the semi-finals to the team that ended up winning the comp, but it was good to get straight back into sport. And I don't know if any of the listeners have played footy before, but I got one hell of a whack today from one of the opposition, and my head's still spinning a bit. So you guys are going to have to help me out if you can see I'm struggling. Any signs of concussion, please call the ambulance.
Yeah, mate. We'll ask you every 20 minutes to make sure that you're all right. Mate, great to have you on the pod once again. We don't have you on all the time, but obviously Arsenal have had a big turnaround in fortunes lately. So looking forward to getting your thoughts on how Arsenal's season has gone so far. And Damo, obviously a More Than a Game regular. How are you this week, mate?
I'm good, mate. Sleep deprived as always with a toddler, but surviving. So I'm here.
Oh, mate, what is it? It's like 30s life, right? Kids, puppies, it's all happening. All right, boys, let's get into it, shall we? Killer, you're the guest. What's your moment of the week this week?
Oh, so moment of the week, I gave the pod a listen, as I have been probably a lot more regularly at the moment. I gave the pod a listen. Unfortunately, the Arsenal Spurs game was just after the podcast was recorded last week, so I feel like we can include it in this week's podcast. Arsenal's North London derby win has had me grinning from ear to ear all week. I suppose the win was huge against our biggest rivals. It feels like, because of Arsenal. I'm sure we'll debrief a lot more. I feel like Arsenal don't really have much to play for at the moment, because we're not really challenging towards the top. I mean, if we get Europa League, that'll be a huge result for us this season, I think. So we're not really competitive. We're not really struggling for relegation. So beating our biggest rivals is probably as good as it's going to get. So it felt pretty good. And we played really well.
Cup final.
Yeah, we blitzed them. We absolutely blitzed them in the first half, which is great to see. And then, second half was a bit more disjointed, but the damage was done already. So, had me. I was watching it. The next day. I didn't look at the score or anything. Went on Optus, watched it again, and I was just absolutely flying around the kitchen in that first half. I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. It's just like bang, 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 go, go, go. Every shot was going in for some reason during that little spell. So, I'm still on a high from that, despite this weekend's result.
Mate, you've got to love a big derby win to put an extra little pep in your step, huh? On a Monday morning.
Absolutely.
I know Damo and I can definitely both sympathise with you. Not following sort of like a big club who's winning trophies every year. We can definitely empathise with you there, mate. Damo, what about you, mate? What was your moment of the week?
I had a few in mind, Tommie. You ran through a couple of them in the opening line there, but I can't go past the low hanging fruit that was Andros Townsend with the Ronaldo celebration at Old Trafford. I thought the funny part was his quote after the game, where he said that Ronaldo was his idol and he spent hours on the training ground trying to execute his techniques, but maybe he should have spent more time on practicing the celebration because he didn't execute it very well. And then he finished off with, it was a bit of respect to him. And I'm thinking, Ronaldo's definitely not feeling respected by that.
So disrespectful. And I love I'm not sure what the right word is, but just the the hubris, I think it is, to say that he was paying homage to his idol by doing that. Like,
I think
100% he's
something
just
nice
taking the
was
piss.
After the game they actually did swap jerseys, so he
Ah.
probably went over and apologized and said something, and Ronaldo probably very reluctantly took Townsend's jersey and threw it in the bin on the way home.
Meanwhile,
I'm sure
Townsend is
the
running around his
frame
living room
counts.
in his brand new Ronaldo jersey, doing the celebration, practicing it for next time.
Yeah, and I'm sure Townsend's jersey will be framed straight to the pool room at the at Ronaldo's house.
I reckon he would have used it to clean the hubcaps on his Bentley on the way home. So, well, look, it wouldn't be a moment of the week for me unless I was gratuitously just picking out like all of the best stuff from around the world. This week we got futsal World Cup semi-finals that were completed. Brazil lost to Argentina 2-0, while Portugal beat Kazakhstan on penalties. That sets up a final in the next day or so. Argentina, defending champions, playing Portugal, who probably have the best player in the world right now in Ricardinho. So look out for that. I think that's actually on SBS. So look, if you don't watch a lot of futsal, recommend you watch, not necessarily that live, because I think it's on at like 3 a.m. Australian Eastern time. But look, if you do get an opportunity to check out like either the highlights or something like that, recommend that. Sticking with some South American flavour, Copa Libertadores semi-finals were on this week as well. Barcelona of Ecuador, love that. Lost to Flamengo.
They probably beat Barcelona of Spain at the moment.
And Palmeiras beat Atletico Mineiro to set up an all-Brazilian final as well. I think that's going to be played in another few weeks or something. So keep an eye out for that. I'm pretty sure that one's on KO as well for and at a pretty friendly time while a lot of people are working from home as well. So I think that'll be on at about 10 o'clock Australian. So like I said, keep an eye out for that. And
I'm pretty sure there's an Arsenal in the Argentinian league as well. So
I think they're in Uruguay, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, they could be, but I think a few of the names down there are a bit suspect.
No, there's a Liverpool as well. I think there's a Liverpool in Uruguay.
There's a lot of teams there that just have, and they wear the same kits and their badges look very similar. They just completely copied clubs that they just liked.
Yeah, they just took
Sunday League vibes,
Pro Evo logos and names. And just...
and look, my final of my 3 moments of the week this week has to be the Melbourne City sash kit that was unveiled. Although I do have to say that as much as I love the idea of a sash kit, I'm not sure about the execution of this, because a part of me almost could have made this an own goal this week, because I feel like Puma, in an attempt to sort of keep things like current and sassy, have sort of over-egged the sash, and there's too much going on. Just needed to be a solid sash, and it wasn't a solid sash. So moment of the week, but could have been an own goal as well. So that's me. But Killer, what about you? Did you have an own goal this week?
Yeah, I did. So as every time I go on the pod, and I wish I did this more often, whenever I'm looking for an own goal, I just browse through the sports news that's happening every day, and there's always some footballer, there's always something that's gone wrong for someone. So
always someone's done something stupid.
Lee Griffiths is my own goal of the week. So just last week, he's playing for Dundee on loan from Celtic at the moment, and they were playing St Johnstone in the I think it was the League Cup. It's the Premier Sports Cup. But anyway, they lost and weren't going too well. One of the St Johnstone fans threw a flare onto the field. At which point Lee Griffiths reacted by just booting it straight back into the crowd. And unfortunately, the poor Lee Griffiths has been charged by police for kicking the ball, or kicking that smoke bomb back into the crowd. I think some form of assault charges have been put up against him for that, which is unfortunate. And he said afterwards, after he was asked about it, and he said, "Oh, it was regrettable that the flare ended up back into the stands. It was never my intention. I just wanted to get it off the field." But there's not a lot of footage except for like fan kind of footage, fans kind of holding up their phones and everything, and it's clear he's just booted this straight back into the fans. Kind of, you know, when you're like, "Oh, I wasn't aiming for the fans," but like if it happened to hit the fans, that'd be pretty good.
Look, maybe I I can maybe understand if it hits like sort of some old lady who's sitting in the stands and really is just an innocent bystander. But yeah, if you're standing next to someone who lobs one in and then it comes back at you, yeah. Sorry, that's on you.
That's on you. So yeah, Lee Griffiths. Not that he's having a great time at the moment. Anyway,
Lee Griffiths also
towards.
Lee Griffiths also of note because I'm pretty sure he's played for both Rangers and Celtic, hasn't he?
Oh, you're the stat man, Tommie.
All right. If I've got that one wrong, please. I'm sure someone will let me know in the DMs after they listen to this. But
when it comes to Rangers and Celtic, someone will definitely let you know.
All right. What about you, Damo? You got an own goal this week?
Yeah, there was a few to pick from, but I'm going to go with speaking of people that are idiots. We'll go with Michael Owen. So in the
what's he doing now?
in the coverage, he was doing the halftime analysis or the post match analysis of the Leeds game over the weekend, and he said about Melier, the goalkeeper, that he remembers going to a game. Going to a game where Melier was playing in the Leeds Academy at 16, and he could just tell that he was going to be a standout goalkeeper just by the way he acted and the way he talked. And he only joined the club 2 years ago or 3 years ago from a French club. So he definitely didn't play that game.
I don't speak too much about it because I'm not too sure. They don't come up very often. But Lorient are my club in France. I was pretty gutted when he left. He was pretty keen to leave Lorient in the French second division at the time. They've since been promoted, but I was happy to see him get a gig at a bigger club and hopefully raise the profile of it a bit. Yoann Wissa, another export of that Brentford striker. He was at Lorient last season, so we're very much a feeder club to the Premier League. I could probably name a dozen players have come from us straight to the Premier League, but he was definitely in France, not in Leeds.
Is Guendouzi from there, or he's from Saint Etienne?
No, Guendouzi's from there as well. Koscielny we signed from there as well. There's the bloke who played for Sunderland before they got relegated.
That narrows it down. It's about 50 blokes.
Midfielder. He had all that stuff.
Didier Ndong or something?
Him. Yeah, Didier Ndong. Yeah. So, and we had Rafael Guerrero, who's now at Borussia Dortmund. He came through Lorient as well. The Dortmund left back. Portuguese left back as well. Kevin Gamero, he came through. Oh, listen, the list is endless. There's a lot of stars that have come through. They kind of do 2-3 seasons, they play well, and then they get moved on. So, Illan Melier is just one of the many that have come through the Lorient, not academy, but I think Lorient just pick up kind of average French players, and they have a few good seasons, and they move on.
Well, bit of that was a rabbit hole I did not expect us to go down today on the pod.
I've been waiting for it. Waiting for my
Thanks, Michael Owen.
It's almost turned into my moment of the week. Sorry, Damo, did you have anything else that you wanted to expand upon that, or?
The one last thing I would say is I saw a very funny tweet that was in response to when I actually saw the video about this. Mm-hmm. And the tweet was, I can just imagine Michael Owen responding when someone calls him out. Well, who the fuck did I watch then? I thought that was pretty funny because you could just picture Owen saying that.
Well, he probably actually thinks he was watching him, right? Like it's not just like an honest mistake and you got the names wrong or something like that.
He's probably does think to do this. He makes shit up all the time, and then people just fact check by a 1 minute Google, and then they go, "What are you even talking about?"
Oh dear. Alrighty, on to my own goal now. A little bit of a COVID theme here, talking about anti-vaxxers and the like. I guess two things, both of sort of similar flavour here. We got Jurgen Klopp. He basically came out with a very eloquent way of talking about COVID vaccines and basically compared it to drink driving laws. And I thought it was pretty much everyone is saying that, yep, like he's pretty much nailed it. It's a really good way of describing it. And the other thing that I wanted to mention was the that in Twitter and social media seems to have really come alive today with talk about 8 players at one particular A-League club who don't appear to be particularly keen on getting the a COVID vaccine, and that's going to create real problems for that sort of unnamed club at this point. Everyone is really sort of unsure whether it's Western Sydney or whether or not it's Melbourne Victory. Obviously, James Tarosi and Jason Davidson are 2 pretty well-known anti-vaxxers. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens, and obviously how it affects those clubs as well, because it's looking like, at least initially, clubs or players won't be able to travel, won't be able to enter stadiums unless they are vaccinated. So it has the potential to really derail some clubs' beginnings to their season. So,
well, if it's one of the Victorian clubs, they literally can't go to work on the 15th without a vaccination because footballers are considered authorised essential workers. So the new government mandate says authorised essential workers have to be vaccinated at least 1 dose by the 15th. So one club from Victoria could be without 8 players.
Yeah, and so I guess I'd say probably in the next 2 weeks we're likely to see more come out about this, because I think some of it is going to bubble to the surface, and obviously it is sort of quite a private matter. I think for a lot of people, what their personal views is, and or whether or not they're getting vaccinated or whatever. But obviously, when it's going to affect whether or not you can play or whether or not you keep your job, you might find that some people start to get a little bit more vocal about their personal situations. So plenty to see there. But look, still a few more things that have come up in the news this week in terms of A-League, in terms of Premier League and the like. So we'll go through those now. The first one is the A-League or the full stop / league, as I'm now calling it, has come out with a rebrand. Damo, what did you think of the rebrand? Are you a fan, or are you not quite sure? Or
I like it. I like the idea, the concept behind what they're trying to do. Obviously, it's not fully rolled out yet. It's a process where they're integrating all men's, women's, youth team football into single social media accounts, and there's not all these different accounts. So I like the concept behind it. The logo has been a topic of discussion on soccer Twitter for hours and hours in the last week. I don't see a problem with it. The A-League has to find a way to brand itself differently to other football leagues because they have to operate differently. So the only thing I have to mention is our catchphrase when we start the pod. It has to be changed to the Premier League, the A-Leagues, and more.
Yeah. That thought had actually crossed my mind this week, and I guess that would actually force us probably to talk a little bit more about the dub as well. And if anything,
is it the dub anymore? You can't call it that.
That is a very good point, because people seem to be that seemed to be the most controversial aspect of this. Would because obviously the W League will no longer exist; it will be the A League Women, and of course alongside its brother brand, the A League Men. So I don't see why they can't still call it the dub, because it's still the A-League Women. There's still a W in there. So,
yeah, I did see a funny video during the week about this. And I'm not sure if you saw this pop up on Twitter, either of you. It was when Hayley Raso signed for Everton a few years ago. They got Tim Cahill to introduce her. And he said that she was an experienced professional that had played in the US leagues. She's played for Australia, and she's played in the A-League. And now it's resurfaced because everyone made fun of him back then. And now they're like, was Timmy onto something?
He knew. But look, it does present a whole bunch of opportunities, I guess, for A-League wheelchair, A-League foot volley, and even A-League futsal. So I guess we've got to wait and see what comes out of that in the next few years. But look, I guess it is probably the most important thing is it's really sort of the APL, the organisation formerly known as the APL. It's them really stamping the sort of their badge on this competition or these competitions. And so I guess now with new branding, we've got a new broadcast partner in Paramount Plus and 10. We're now seeing quite a different organisation, a different product already before the season's even started. So whilst the season or the last few years might have been guilty of being called a little bit stale, I think there is definitely a freshness about the leagues at the moment, and that's really exciting. I think for a lot of long time A League and W League followers. So all goodness there. Next up is Dan Sturridge. He's signed with Perth Glory. That's a pretty big move, isn't it, fellas?
That's it.
It's huge, and I read an article this morning actually, which caught my attention that it's Brad Jones played at Liverpool when Daniel Sturridge was there. So if there was a connection that you're trying to find somewhere as to who Sturridge spoke to that convinced him to move to Perth, it may well could have been Brad Jones, and that only clicked to me this morning.
Well, I did see, I think it was about a week ago, so it was probably 4 days before all of this sort of blew up, and it did blow up very quickly. It was that someone noticed that Brad Jones and Daniel Sturridge just started following each other on Instagram or something. And I thought, first of all, like, that's incredible pickup, but how did they even find that out? Like, are they following both players? And they're such niche players that, let's face it, like Brad Jones is, I think he's at the Glory at the moment. And Daniel Sturridge, I think he's kicking or was kicking around in Turkey up until now. So,
well, he actually was. He signed a 3-year contract at Trabzonspor in Turkey, and only played half a dozen games before he got a 2-year ban from the Turkish league for betting on football. So he actually hasn't played in a good 18 months, and he's been banned from Turkish football and was still under contract. So he's kind of just been in the wilderness for a while, and he's popped back up. And I think I said it maybe to you earlier in the week, Tommie. I was very surprised that he chose Australia over the US, over the MLS. He appeals to me as though he's a guy that would like the US culture and would like to be involved in the MLS, and he would be a face of a brand over there, and I thought that would appeal to him. But maybe he wants to just get back to playing football, and Perth could be the place for him to do that. So let's hope.
Yeah, it's interesting, I guess, because of those two perspectives on looking at that situation, right? Like he could view Perth as an opportunity to sort of get his career back on track, as opposed to, oh yeah, I can go get my brand on track if I go to the US, kind of thing. So
I just want to know if he's brought his dog with him to keep her safe. Do you remember that? From a couple of months ago, Daniel Sturridge's dog was kidnapped.
What? I don't remember this.
Oh, this is hilarious. It was the headline probably a few months ago, I think now. His dog was kidnapped, and he posted all over his social media that his dog was missing and there'd be a reward if anyone found her. Anyway, his dog was returned to him like a day later. But I just want to know if the dog's coming with him to Perth.
Well, mate, we're going to have to go digging, I think, and do a little bit of research, I think, this week to find out what's going on with Daniel Sturridge's dog. Killer, I think your internet might have just bottomed out there for a second, but look, how excited are you about Daniel Sturridge coming to Australia?
Oh, it's a big name. It's a big name. Hopefully he brings a bunch of goals with him as well. I think Perth could probably use someone like him on their squad as well, just to kind of knock those goals in as well. And I think it was just going to bring a fresh buzz as well, maybe along with the rebranding and everything else. He's a huge name. Obviously, as you mentioned, Damo, he's been out for a while, but it's just going to bring another level of excitement. I can't think of kind of other, like as big names. Kind of, yes, the big names come up regularly as well, but he's certainly one of the biggest that has come at a relatively decent age as well.
Well, yeah, that's a good point about his age, but also his profile, I guess, as well. I think we are likely to see maybe some new A-League fans jump on this year, if nothing else, just following Daniel Sturridge, because they're massive Liverpool fans, and obviously he was very successful for them sort of was it close to 5 years ago now. But as Colby and Jesse have said in the group chat, it's obviously he's got quite a bit of a special place in their hearts after his success with Liverpool. So, and obviously there is a metric shit ton of Liverpool supporters in Australia. So, looking forward to plenty of Liverpool jerseys at A-League matches.
Yeah.
I mean, Tommie, it's a good point you make about bringing new eyes to the league, because obviously we've seen stars come into the A-League before. Notably that season where Del Piero, Heskey, and Ono all came in, that comes to mind. But it often seems like the stars that are brought in are stars from a past generation of footballers, if that makes sense. Like they're a lot older, and that's who they try to bring older eyes to the game, if anything, by bringing those players in. It feels like Sturridge is bringing through a younger generation of eyes to the A-League, and they can market him a very different way to the way Del Piero was marketed. And I feel like Sturridge will be on board with that kind of fresh, new age marketing. And it's a huge coup, not just for Perth Glory, but for the league in general. And I wonder how much the A-League was actually involved in, paying image rights salaries or paying all these other kind of money to bring him on board to help out Perth Glory, because it's an enormous signing for the league as well as for Perth.
Yeah, and one that I guess they would have to understand, I guess, those image rights and be having those conversations with Sturridge's people to make sure they're getting the most out of his image and how they can really get him out there. And I've sort of had it's been a bit of a bee in my bonnet about Diamante and how he's doing stuff with he seems to always have an AFL footy in his hands, and that just absolutely triggers me. But I'm wondering with Sturridge arriving, I imagine like the A-League, they would be thinking, okay, yep, like let's get this guy out there into as much like mainstream media as we can, even if it is only Channel 10. So, but still, I guess very exciting times ahead. Boys, do you think $190 for a Perth Glory Sturridge jersey is too much, or about right?
It's very expensive toilet paper.
I think $190 for any jersey full stop is too much.
Fair.
You'd have to start even Arsenal. I wouldn't even pay $190 for an Arsenal jersey.
Boys, one final thing before we move on.
A match worn Thierry Henry jersey, maybe.
Yeah, you're right. That's a little bit different, isn't it? One final thing on Perth before we move on. This pretty much spells the end of Diego Castro's stint at Perth Glory. I think he's been there for 6 years. Hard to think of a better, more successful marquee as terms of longevity and on the pitch contribution than Diego Castro, really, for me.
Yeah, look, he's in the league with Ninkovic and Broish as those top kind of three marquees that have come in, performed at an extremely high level for a long time, and you'd have to put those three on a pedestal above the rest of the marquees that have come into the league.
And I guess whilst consistently those three have been exceptionally good, but I mean, Ninkovic has been here 4 years now, I think.
I think it's a lot longer than that.
Okay, all right. I was going to make the point that Castro maybe edges those other two because he's been here for so long. But yeah, maybe I need to check my dates and figure out who's been here the longest. But yeah, definitely, I think those
Ninkovic's seventh season with Sydney.
All right, okay. Bloody hell, he arrived before Castro did then.
Yeah.
All right. Everyone who follows the A-League's probably been aware or been tracking the issues that Western United have been having with where they'll be playing some of their matches this year. Some would be aware that they were trying to play a couple of games at Lakeside Stadium, the home of South Melbourne, and that this week, basically after they announced it, it got turned off, and South Melbourne said, yeah, sorry, no, not going to happen. We've got sort of veto rights to this or to other football teams being able to play there, and no, it's not happening. And there was lots of backwards and forwards between both South Melbourne, Western United, and lots of A-League fans as well, obviously, and NPL fans as well, about their feelings about this. But look, Damo, I'd love to hear your perspective on, I guess, who are the winners and losers out of how this is all panned out now that Western United, they're not going to be playing any games at Lakeside Stadium. They're going to be playing those two matches that were scheduled for there. They're going to be played at Amy Park now. Who are the winners and losers out of Western United, South Melbourne, and even City and Melbourne Victory?
I think it's tough to kind of say that who's the winners and losers, because if you're a South Melbourne fan, you're saying you've won here, because you're taking, like, we've taken a stand. They can't use our stadium. But I think South Melbourne have lost out here. I think South Melbourne had the opportunity to really cash in on A-League being played at their ground. They could play curtain raiser games. They could do a whole bunch of stuff. I think the government have lost out because Lakeside Stadium could have been given a naming rights partner. Now it's on the national stage. Could have had a sponsor. So they've lost out on some income. I think City and Victory have lost out because now they have to share their ground with Western United again. So and Western United have lost out because now they don't get to play at the ground they wanted to. So I actually think
lost face as well. Yeah.
There's no real winners in this situation apart from South Melbourne thinking that they're winners.
South Melbourne fans, they're probably the winners out of this because it feels like they've sort of thumbed their nose at the establishment that's rejected them and has said for a long time that basically they won't be involved in the A-League. So,
I find it ironic that when this the latest expansion was all happening, and obviously South Melbourne were one of the favourites at the time to get given the license. One of the reasons behind why they weren't given a license was that the FFA at the time didn't think that Lakeside Stadium was cut out for the A-League. So it's kind of a bit of, obviously it's not the FFA anymore that were making this decision. It was Western United, who are now governed by the A-Leagues, and FFA have nothing to do with it. But yeah, it's interesting that it was only a few years ago that Lakeside Stadium was deemed not a good enough stadium for the A-League, and now it's Lakeside who are pushing A-League teams away, saying, "Well, no."
Yeah, it's a disappointing and frustrating affair. I think as fans of not even any of those teams, as just a follower of the league more broadly, I think it's just been a really disappointing and frustrating affair. But I guess if there's any light or positive to come out of this is that it's been resolved. So,
well, I'm not sure what the situation is with obviously Western United trying to find the stadium deal. I do know from a friend of mine who's involved that Knights Stadium, Somers Street, where Melbourne Knights play, is not up to safety standards that the A-League have. So the stadium's decrepit, it's falling apart, so that they weren't allowed to play games there. I think that they played a game at Whit Noble last year. It was a huge success. Obviously, the Western Bulldogs own that ground. But the Western Bulldogs were looking for exorbitant rent prices that Western United just couldn't afford. So
pricing out of it, basically.
It would have been a perfect scenario in reality, but the Western Bulldogs was just asking for way too much money, from what I understand.
Another disappointing outcome, I guess, there, that wasn't able to go ahead either. Was the one final thing before we get on to some Premier League and other football is that the Socceroos squad was announced overnight. Obviously, Socceroos are going to be playing Oman, in Qatar, and Japan as well in this upcoming round of Asian World Cup qualifiers. So very exciting. Stacked squad, full strength squad, basically. Only 2 Australian-based players in Ryan Grant and Economides. Grant, I didn't realise this, but Grant's been apparently training in Scotland with Hibs, which is actually great for Grant because 1, it's A-League off-season at the moment, but 2, it probably means he could be getting some new influences on his career and on his game, which that can only be a positive thing as well. Daniel Arzani's been named in the squad as well, and just as someone pointed out on the socials, doesn't have an assist for 12 months and doesn't have any club goals for 2.5 years. So I guess we'll see what sort of form he's in camp. But Damo, what are your thoughts ahead of these upcoming qualifiers?
Obviously, they're huge games that we've got, these upcoming qualifiers. It's a shame that both Matt Leckie and Jamie McLaren aren't involved under their own choice, which is fair enough. They don't want to have to go through quarantining coming back to Australia, which is obviously the reason why Ryan Grant has stayed over. I don't think McLaren and Leckie really felt that was an option for them to stay and train elsewhere. So they would have been in the squad, in a full strength squad, if we were picking everyone available. So they'll be missed. But then it does give the chance, obviously, to a couple of other people like Economides and Arzani, who spoke about. He's always going to offer something. We don't know what that something is.
Or if it'll be good, yeah.
But I almost feel like it's Graham Arnold's love child, and he's just trying to hype him up to the world, to someone buy him. Is kind of how I feel why he's still involved.
Look, and that's it. If he has a blinder, someone will go, hang on, where's this guy playing? What? The Belgian second division? Like, oh, gee, sign him up. And
I did find it interesting, Tommie, sorry to interrupt. So when the national team is announced on the Socceroos website, they actually include the name of the player, the club that they currently play at, how many caps and goals, and then what their first junior club member was at. And Daniel Arzani is listed as the mascot Vipers Futsal Club on the Socceroos website. So he played futsal before he played football, and apparently didn't start playing 11-a-side football till he was 12 or 13 years old.
Wow. That's I noticed that as well, and it sort of I raised my eyebrows at it as well. Interesting little fact, I guess, about Daniel Arzani, and might explain some aspects of how he plays too.
Well, it's also talking about futsal, and Tom Rogic is of the same ilk. He didn't play 11-a-side till he was 12, 13, 14 years old, and that's a well-told story. He's back in the squad. I think a huge inclusion. Obviously, he's done well under Ange at Celtic. Who've got their own issues at the moment, but Rogic has been one of the standouts there so far this season. So I think Australia have been really crying out for that number 10 role to be filled. We've sort of been playing 2 8s or 2 6s, or Hrustic has gone in the middle, he's gone wide. I think in a full strength team, Rogic starts there and behind the strikers and can kind of run the show in the form that he's in. And if he's fit and healthy, well, he's got to play, because how often is he fit and healthy?
I'd be very surprised if he doesn't play against Oman and doesn't start, but I wouldn't be shocked if he doesn't start against Japan. So I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Mate, before we move on though, you got a score prediction for those two matches?
Oh, so hard to predict. I think we'll get a draw against Japan, and I think we'll nudge Oman 1-0.
Interesting.
And I don't want to say what the draw is. It could be 0-0, could be 1-1, but I think it'll be 2 very low scoring games.
Well, let's face it. I think everyone, or I think a lot of Australian fans would be very happy with 4 points out of these 2 matches.
Big time.
All right, let's kick on to some Premier League now, though. Alrighty, so a couple of pretty tasty fixtures overnight. The first one, I think, less so an actual fixture, and more so because of a couple of key moments in that match. That one, the first up was Manchester United versus Everton. Cristiano Ronaldo and Pogba and Sancho all started on the bench, and things were looking positive for Manchester United at the start of the game, with Martial staking his claim for more minutes as he finished nicely from the edge of the box past Pickford.
It was a great goal. Brilliant build up in that goal. It was very, when that went in, it was kind of like, okay, this is Manchester United, and it felt like it was going to be a foregone conclusion from then on.
And Bruno's assist was just top notch as well. Just the way he drew the man and then just played this really cute little ball. Kind of, I'm not sure if it was maybe like a no look, but. And then just waited it perfectly for Martial just to run onto it at full tilt.
Well, Killian, you're part of the goalkeepers union. Does Pickford have to do better there?
Oh, I think so, but it does get a nick. It does get a nick on the way
deflection.
In. It gets a small deflection, and he's hit it so fast that I reckon I'm probably on. I wouldn't be too hard on Pickford for that one. I think that was a tricky one. I think the deflection, most days you shouldn't be beating your near post, yada yada, but it did get a deflection, and he had his hands up, and it just missed him by a little bit. So. Yeah, it's a tough one for him. But I don't know. I felt like Bruno was having a really, really big influence on the game. Certainly in the first half as well, and that assist. Maybe, I don't know, because like some of the other big hitters weren't playing, and he was kind of the man. But I think
starting to get the impression that Bruno likes being the big dog there, because things sort of started to, I wouldn't say the wheels fell off, but I think there was definitely a change in the air once Ronaldo came on in the second half.
But he's here to save us, kind of thing. Okay, it's all right. We've got Ronaldo now. We'll be fine.
There's an air of that confidence about the stadium as well. You could kind of feel that the fans in the ground expected that they were going to win that game when it was level, because here's Ronaldo. Here we go again. He did it midweek. He's done it for 25 years. You just kind of expect that from him.
But I was impressed as well. Cavani had a decent game as well, I thought. Sorry, go on.
And Cavani's someone who I mentioned in the group chat, Damo, that I think he's been a little bit unlucky in the last few years, because he's constantly, well, at Napoli he was sort of the unmistakable big dog there, but then he went to PSG and he played second fiddle for a long time to Zlatan, and then Zlatan left, and he thought, oh well, here's Cavani's opportunity to shine, and it just didn't happen.
Neymar
Neymar
Mbappe
exactly
came in.
Exactly. And again, he sort of became a number 9 who is being sort of shunted out to the left for a more high profile player.
But he's
There's
always
a few
kind of
players
played
in-
that. He's always kind of played that role, that hardworking, non-traditional 9 kind of role. Even when he was the main man at Napoli, that was under a Napoli side that pressed ridiculously high, and his main role there was to just chase until he couldn't chase any longer. But because he was the focal point of a front 3, he was there to put it in. But Cavani is and I used to say this, he's one of those players that if you're a manager of kids, if you coach kids, you show them exactly what Cavani does until the ball falls to his feet when he's about to have a shot. Then you switch the footage to someone who can finish.
It's funny because at Man United, he's considered like a fantastic finisher, right? Like obviously until Ronaldo arrived, but he's still there's still this sense that like he's a much better number 9 than the likes of sort of say Martial or even Rashford as sort of a pure number 9 in terms of finishing. But alas, look, things did really change for the worse for Man United in the second half, and Everton did equalise. And look, I really want to dissect this Everton equaliser because there's a lot going on here, right? I think everyone who's watched the pod, or sorry, listening to the pod, will have seen the goal. But look, let's pull apart its sort of little individual pieces. So first of all, there's a Man United start the play with a corner. They take the corner, it's cleared, and then Demarai Gray, or Dimmy Gray, as Andros Townsend called him, I like that. Demarai Gray then basically just chases after the ball like an absolute dog, and then chases down the ball. Then basically wins it up against Fred in a real 50-50 there, shoulder to shoulder, really, really hard, 2 players just really going for it. And then Gray just tears down the line, plays it inside for Decore. Decore, who's got no right to be up that far up the pitch as well at this point. He then lays it off to Townsend. Great finish from Townsend. And I thought De Gea's body language for this at this moment was a little bit strange as well, because De Gea he looks just completely rooted to the spot when really I just was surprised at his sort of lack of anything in response to this moment. It was a little bit bizarre. And then of course, obviously, there was, after the great finish from Townsend, we had the fantastic celebration. Oh, geez. And at this point, I was screaming at the TV because it was a really satisfying goal. There was a lot going on there.
I think the piece of commentary, I don't know who the main commentator for this game was. We'll have to ask Jesse because he seems to know who commentates every game. So we'll ask him. But I think it was a brilliant piece of commentary that was obviously overshadowed by Andros Townsend's celebration, which everyone was talking about at the time. But he said that if Evertonians were looking for what the new DNA of their team was, they've just seen it. And I think it wrapped up exactly how Rafa Benitez has always played in big games. And there's a reason he signed Demarai Gray and Andros Townsend, and people kind of questioned it, and they've been the 2 star players. So it's all seemingly finally coming together for Everton, and you don't want to talk too soon, but I mean that they're at the top end of the table and they're playing some pretty good, very incisive football at times. So if you'd be happy to be an Everton fan right now, I'll tell you that much.
I feel like Gray has just come on so far, like in the first maybe 5, 6, 7 games of the season so far. Like with Leicester, he was in and out of the team. We were expecting big things from him. He was very young, this kind of prodigious talent coming from, I think it was from the Championship, wasn't he? Before he came up.
I think he
from
did
Birmingham,
come
was it?
from,
I think
well,
Birmingham.
maybe.
Yeah,
Birmingham, yeah.
He's only exclusively plays for blue teams.
Only exclusive plays at Leverkusen.
Yeah.
But
he's just
like
mirroring Bruce Kamau.
100%.
He never got the I never felt like he got the backing a good string of games, whereas now he feels like he's the man. And that moment when he just like barges Fred out of the way was just like, that already had me on my seat. Yeah, but
he beat him in a 50-50, and then the second one he just put Fred on his ass. And
he's not boys either. Demarai Gray's not a massive boy either.
I sent it was a TikTok video to Tommie earlier, which was a fan's angle of that goal. And you can kind of just see as soon as Demarai Gray just bullies Fred off the ball, Fred kind of spins around and you can almost like freeze frame his face where he's like, oh shit.
What I also found really interesting in that video demo is that the crowd, they almost there's a feeling that they know what's about to happen.
Yep.
Because pretty much as soon as Demarai Gray just bosses Fred, then you hear the crowd turn. They're all swearing and cursing at the Man United players and such. And it's almost like they've seen this before. They know how this scene plays out. And that for me was, like we mentioned about the sort of that confidence or arrogance about Ronaldo, that he's going to solve all of Man United's problems. But at the same time, it's a brittle confidence as well, because we saw how quickly they still know deep down that this is a really flawed team right now. So really fascinating moment.
Up top, but at the back, there's still kind of some question marks for sure as well. And I was a little bit like surprised by even Luke Shaw in that situation as well, where Doucouré just received the ball and he was bursting through a little bit until he had to cut back. But Shaw just left this huge, massive space for Townsend because he was covering so desperately. But he just really, I felt like he really overcommitted and just never gave himself an option of going back. So that ball just made it easy for Doucouré just to lay it into his path. And when Shaw actually gets to Doucouré, there's actually a few more United players have managed to get back to him at that stage as well. So he kind of has just left. I felt like his movement there was a bit confusing. He should maybe not have committed so far that way, because they had cover coming back, and he's just left that massive space for Townsend to slot it in.
Because Everton could have or should have maybe won the game, but alas, it wasn't to be. Tom Davis passed to an offside Yeremina for a tap-in. It was actually called a goal by the on-field referee, but VAR called it back, and it stayed 1-1 after Ronaldo, Sancho and Pogba all came onto the field but were unable to make a difference. Boys, should Davies and Meter have done better there, or is that somewhat forgivable in the circumstances?
Have a hit, Davies.
But that's not the kind of player he is. He's always going to play that off. So I don't know.
And that's exactly the sort of player that Mina is as well.
Yeah, to be offside.
Mina has to hold his run. That's all. That's on Mina, because if Davies,
he's a centre half though. Like, it's not his job to hold his run to keep onside.
So, he doesn't know how to do it.
Everyone can be sort of forgiven.
Yeah.
It would have been a really frustrating moment, I think, for Everton fans. But I think you can't really avoid the argument that Man United were very, very lucky to come away with a point from this game, though, because Everton, based off of those two moments alone, they really did deserve to take all 3 points, I felt. But alas, that's in the end, a point each is probably fair. Next up, Killian, your team, Arsenal, they went to the Amex to play Brighton, but it wasn't really a game to talk about in terms of highlights or individual moments where sort of one particular player just completely sort of blew up the game. But probably unfortunately, while you're on the pod, there was probably two players that were most of note was Ramsdale and Sanchez. I thought both of those two players, they seem to want to make some sort of a mark on the game, because both of them in very key moments looked like they were going to pull off great saves and did pull off some great saves, but both players came very close to absolutely gifting the other team a goal as well. And I think both teams were probably sighing a big sigh of relief towards the end of the game that they did take at least a point away from the game. Killer, I did want to talk, I guess, a little bit more broadly about Arsenal with you while you're on the pod. And I mentioned Ramsdale just a second ago. Obviously, was at Sheffield United last year, and I think pretty sure we've heard Damo's thoughts on him before. But he's now an Arsenal player, and in recent weeks he's taken over the number 1 jersey for Arsenal. So, who would you prefer, Killer, at Arsenal in goal, Ramsdale or Leno?
After seeing Ramsdale play these last 4 games, he started 4 games straight, I believe. And for me, he's the number 1. I think that for whatever reason, the last few seasons, he just feels like he's been a bit flat. He kind of comes up with these brilliant saves at the time, but overall, maybe his communication isn't the best. Maybe it just feels to me like he has been a bit flat. And I think having a really good goalkeeper is the spine, is like the key, I find, to like most like winning teams.
Mm-hmm.
Like you can see all the big teams that won the Premier League last few years, they've all invested heavily in a massive goalkeeper. And if it hasn't worked out first round like Chelsea, they've invested massively again for a second goalkeeper. So buying Ramsdale, I thought was probably a good idea because Leno was keeping an eye out for maybe a move away from Arsenal. And I think he'll certainly move maybe January, maybe in the summer if he doesn't get more game time.
Arsenal,
Ramsdale, I feel like he's taken it upon himself to like make that his, whereas Leno maybe got a bit comfortable, but Ramsdale is really kind of grabbing the bull by horns, I feel.
I hope Ramsdale becomes the number one at Arsenal, because if he starts more games than Leno this year, Arsenal have to pay Sheffield United an extra £7 million. So that's one thing. But I wouldn't get too confident about Ramsdale being very different to Leno. I've watched him a lot over the last few years. Obviously, he was at Sheffield United before Bournemouth and then back at Sheffield United. He's a brilliant shot stopper, and you can see that, like the save he made last night. He's made a few big saves over the last few weeks, but he's very prone to coming out for crosses at the wrong time. He's very prone to errors with the ball at his feet. He comes out at the wrong time. I don't think Ramsdale is the keeper that Arsenal need if they want to get back to the level they want to be at. He will be a second string goalkeeper when they invest heavily in the big time goalkeeper that you were just talking about.
Yeah, but I don't think that big time goalkeeper wants to come to
Arsenal. Not for a while.
Not for Arsenal. But no, I want to point out there was a moment. I just feel like the intensity that he brings, or like the fire, I don't know, the fire, his fiery nature maybe was in the game last week against Spurs. Harry Kane had a really good shot from the edge of the box, which he saved, and then I think one of the wingers, maybe Son, was like lining up to get the rebound in, and TommieSIUUU got in just ahead and put it out for a corner, and then both of them, like he just went right up to TommieSIUUU and started screaming in his face, kind of getting him revved up, getting it like, this is it, this is the derby. And I just felt like, I don't know, he's got a bit of passion, and maybe Leno's just been a bit indifferent.
Isn't that the best part about being a goalkeeper, though? Like, as soon as like a shot comes at you and you parry it away, you're able to get up and just abuse everyone in front of you for doing the wrong thing.
No, it was the opposite way. He was like get in, like great clearance. Like he was probably screaming at TommieSIUUU to get like wake up, get the ball clear, and then just, you know, when Pickford makes a massive save, he screams abuse at everyone. Whereas I feel like Ramsdale is kind of encouraging everyone. Being like, you see, how great is this? How great is defending? How good is keeping the clean sheet? So
he's saying Ramsdale is like positive Pickford?
Positive Pickford, maybe.
That's great.
Don't make that the name of the pod this year, though.
Yeah, positive Pickford.
I saw. Yeah. Jesse had a nice zinger last week, and you made that the title of the podcast. So.
Oh dear. All right, Killer. While we've still got you here, there's obviously been a pretty big turnaround in form from Arsenal's beginning to their last few results, though. I'll ask you, I guess this is a bit of a double-barreled question. What was going wrong at the beginning of the season, and was what was corrected, and that's what's led to the turnaround in form, or has there been other tweaks that have happened which have sort of caused an uptick in Arsenal's form?
Yeah, good question. I think, and I've heard this a lot, kind of, it's not particularly an original thought, but I kind of tend to agree a lot with it as well, is the first 3 games of the season, that first game at Brentford, Friday Night Lights, first game in the Premier League in a long time, and Arsenal were missing a few people on the squad as well. I think like Brentford being that up for it, and we've seen Brentford a very good side since then as well. You can kind of forgive Arsenal for losing it. Obviously, I would have loved for them to win, but they weren't at the races. And then they proceeded to play the Premier League champions and the Champions League champions in like for the next 2 games, back to back. And I went through just before the podcast, and I kind of just picked up all of the starting lineups of the Arsenal starting lineups going forward. And we haven't played the big teams. Obviously, Spurs are the only big team that we've played or that we've beaten this season. But even then, they've got some issues at the moment. But the stability of the back 4, the back 5 that we've had since the Norwich result, I believe that was the first win. I'm looking back at some of the starting lineups, and that starting lineup against City, where we had 5 at the back, of which in our middle three were Rob Holding, Kolasinac, and Callum Chambers, and that never stood a chance.
Grim.
Never stood a chance against City. And we also had Cedric starting on the right back. He's a good backup option, but you can tell like every single one of those players, apart from Tierney, is not starting in our full strength 11.
There's a reason why Southampton let him go, right?
Yeah, well, and as a backup, he's fine. He's fine as a backup option. Play him in the League Cup. I'm happy with that. Or against some weaker teams in the FA Cup, but he's not the guy. And I feel like TommieSIUUU is a nice little counterbalance to Tierney's bombing forward, where TommieSIUUU does get forward, but he seems so far so good with him. He's very solid at the back. He can play a ball. He can get forward, but he doesn't commit as far up as Tierney as well. So we do have the nice balance there. I find that if Tierney does bomb forward, we can kind of slide around, shuffle around, and TommieSIUUU can kind of sit as part of a back three if Tierney's caught out upfield.
Was the 0-0 against Brighton a disappointing result? I mean, at the end of the day, you've taken a point off a team in the top 6.
I feel like it is. I think to an extent, as an Arsenal fan, you always feel like you should be beating the smaller names, not necessarily the based on current form. Obviously Brighton have had a great start, and I was nervy. I don't think Arsenal deserved a point from that game. I was nervous the entire game. Every time the ball went in, Shane Duffy got close a few times. I remember watching a few corners, and Arsenal were doing like this zonal marking thing where they'd have the centre backs would zonally mark, and then the midfielders would man mark. But at one point, we had Martin Odegaard marking Dan Burn for a corner. I was like, this spells trouble. It's just
if you look at the without having watched the game, if you look at the numbers of the normal stat lines that you see from football, it's almost like the logos have just been swapped from what you would expect. You know, Brighton had over 60% of possession. They had 21 shots to Arsenal's 8. They had like double the amount of corners. It's just, you know,
Arsenal didn't do much. They managed to get Saka into space 2-3 times, at which point he would do this great run and would come close. But there was no kind of big build-up play. It was more like, okay, Saka will drift out wide, pick up the ball in space, and then make something happen. But it didn't seem like there was kind of whatever the game plan was, it didn't seem like that's what we were executing. Whereas Brighton, for sure, was like, we're just going to keep doing this and a goal has to come. And I thought Cucurella down the left wing he got in behind so often and fizzed those balls across the box that it was just waiting for someone to get on the end of it. And I think I think Brighton are going to come out. Arsenal, as an Arsenal fan, I'm very happy with that result because the game that we played did not deserve to win, and we were under pressure for sure.
It always feels a bit you don't know what the kind of strategy is at a club when, like you're saying, you're just so ever reliant on getting the ball to Saka and Saka getting into good areas. When that's happening for your team, it's almost like, well, you know things aren't in a good place when you're so reliant on one or two individuals to have to create and do everything themselves. There's no kind of framework to how they're playing at the moment.
I never thought I'd say this as well, but I do think that we did miss Xhaka. I think that whilst he is prone for a rash tackle, I thought at times Sambi Lokonga went missing. I mean, I saw Partey was very prevalent. He was very good defensively. He got quite a few interceptions. He nearly scored, actually. He had a good shot from the edge of the box. But Lokonga was kind of in and out of the game. Maybe it's new to the Premier League, obviously a fairly young player as well. I'm sure he's going to get a lot of game time now because Xhaka's out for, I think, at least 3 months, or probably won't see him until January. So yeah, just an innocuous kind of challenge that he got picked up against Spurs. But maybe struggle. It might be a bit of a weak spot in that midfield because if not Lokonga, then I'm not sure who else was there. Maybe El Neni, which isn't a great option either.
Does seem a little bit like when Guendouzi was in or around the starting 11 for Arsenal about 18 months ago, and you sort of sense that there was a real player there, but not quite yet. And it just seemed like it was a little bit too soon for him to be playing such a key role for a club at that level. But look, sadly, fellas, we are going to need to keep moving though. Next up, Chelsea, they hosted Southampton. Goals from Trevor Chalobah again. Timo Werner and Chili B were enough for Chelsea to secure all 3 points. James Ward-Prowse, he got a goal from the spot as well as getting sent off. So a real sort of mixed day at the office for JWP there. got the mixed dozen there. That takes Chelsea top of the Premier League, and but with other results possibly going other ways, it could mean that Chelsea may fall as low as second. So great result for Chelsea. Wolves got 3 points after scoring twice against Newcastle. A brace from Hwang Hee-chan gave Wolves the win, but Newcastle did equalise at 1 point with a great goal as well. Boys, that Newcastle goal was actually probably a little bit. One of the Wolves goals was a little bit controversial with Carl Darlow down injured. Do you think that should have been brought back, or you think that that's fair that they played on?
Man, as per the rules of the game, the referee only has to stop it if it's a head injury, right? I'm pretty sure it wasn't a head injury, and outside of that, it's just kind of this sort of mutual understanding, supposed to be respect that you kick the ball out, which for me as a player, if I was coaching, I would never have my team do that. You know, I would play until the ref tells to stop the game, and as per the rules, the game stops if it's a head injury. Otherwise, it's play on.
And as we saw with the Newcastle goal as well, Sa picked up a knock in the lead up to that as well.
Well, if I got I might have the teams around the wrong way. Sorry.
I believe that
it was two goals.
Yeah, it might have been. I definitely know for Sa picked up that knock, and then Hendrick knocked it in from the edge of the box while he was kind of scrambling, kind of limping back into his goal mouth. But yeah, no, I think looking back at the replay, there was no foul played. I think it was Joe Linton played the ball. I think he got there just ahead of the keeper as well, and then it just spilled out. At which point he hurt himself. But I mean, there was a bit of play in between as Newcastle were kind of regaining control of the possession and then took the shot. But if you can imagine the ball just spilled out in front of the box and someone else was there to tap it in, it wouldn't have been discussion at all. It's just the fact that it maybe took 20 seconds for the ball to actually get into the net.
But where has Hwang Hee-chan come from? He
Germany?
looks like one hell of a player, but if you look at his previous record, he played 20 games at Leipzig, didn't score a goal. He played 20 games for Hamburg, didn't score a goal in the league. He obviously
Red Bull. He's the Red Bull connection as well. He was at Salzburg before.
Yeah, and then he was at Salzburg as well, and I think he scored 1 in every 4 games at Salzburg over a couple of seasons there. So, I mean, he's not been a prolific goal scorer, but he's kind of that very quintessential South Korean technical mold of a player where he'll go left or right, and either way he goes, he's deadly. It's kind of very much like Son, left, right foot. All they need is half a yard to get a shot away. And man, Korea are putting together a hell of a team if they got those two up front.
It's like a Korean Adama Traore in that he would just be useless for game on game, and then he would just pull something out of the hat at an unforeseen time.
Well, he's got 3 goals in 4 games now.
3 so far, yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder if when they picked him up, they might have been because he was late enough in the window. He was picked up late enough in the window.
He's on loan. Yeah,
he's on loan. Sure,
he's on loan from
low risk as well. And Jimenez coming back from the injury kind of. It was great to see him score last week, by the way. But yeah, you don't really know how he's going to come back from that knock as well. And having somebody as a backup option on loan who's now maybe scoring goals, so we'll probably feature a bit more.
Taking the pressure off of Jimenez, I think, as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
But Leeds hosted Watford as well. Leeds absolutely battering Watford, but could only find a solitary goal in a game that ended up finishing 1-0. Raul Llorente got the tap in there on his return from injury. I've got to say, Raul Llorente sounds like the name of a Spanish football I'd make up as a kid if I was using famous footballers as inspiration. Burnley hosted Norwich in a bit of a relegation 6-pointer early on in the season. It finished 0-0, which just feels like the epitome of both of these teams' seasons so far, and a point which really is not particularly very useful for either team as well at this point too. So Norwich also finally got their first point of the season. So well done, Norwich.
Yay.
Bit of a stat for you. I did mention this, I think, 2 weeks ago on the pod that Norwich were one of only 4 or 5 teams in the top 4 English divisions and the top 5 or the big 5 European leagues to not have a point, and with Norwich getting a point, it means that they just leave Getafe in Spain now as the only team in those 9 leagues to not have a point at this stage of the season. So got a feel for the supporters of Getafe.
What are you guys' thoughts on Norwich possibly beating Derby's unwanted record of lowest points in the Premier League season?
If anyone's going to do it, it's going to be this Norwich team. Like they almost did it 2 years ago.
And they're worse, I think, this time around. At least they were exciting last time. They're not scoring goals now.
No, at least Pookie was banging in hat-tricks at the start of the season 2 years ago.
Yeah. Oh, jeez. Grim. But look, boys, we're going to have to keep things moving. Got a big game to preview. Liverpool and Manchester City. Liverpool hosting this time around. Both teams in Liverpool in particular are in pretty solid form right now. But boys, do you think City's strikerless situation can find the goals this time against a pretty defensively resolute Liverpool side at the moment?
If you'd asked me that question a week ago, I would have said it's kind of a silly argument to say that, City strikerless are struggling to score goals. But you watch them midweek and they looked really toothless for the first time in a long time. And it was really showed that when they didn't play well, they do need a striker. So it's another big game, and everyone will love to talk about the tactics again as they do in games like this. But usually in big games, it's individual moments from individual players, and that's when you need a 9 to do the job for you. So I think Liverpool will edge them here. I think Salah's currently one of, if not the best players in the world at the moment, definitely the best player in the Premier League for me right now. And I think he'll be unstoppable.
Got a score prediction from you two fellas?
3-1 Liverpool.
Oof.
3-1. I think I feel like a draw is on the cards for this one as well. A scoring draw, maybe a 1-1 or 2-2. I feel like both players have got the talent to get the ball in the back of the net, even if they're not playing with that striker as well. And I know Pep's team must be kind of pretty fired up after last week's win as well, even the Premier League. Yes, the Champions League didn't go as planned, but
just get off the fence, killer. Come on, just tell us who's going to win.
Neither. I hate them both.
Yeah, I would love for both teams to lose.
That's not an option right now. Yeah.
That's me when I'm talking about half of these teams. All right. Look, normally we would go through and preview all of the teams, but we're running a little bit behind schedule this week, though. So I do have some good news, though. This week being the first weekend in October means the daylight saving started, but also we've got a more than a game FPL prize to give away as well. So, look, just presents and gifts everywhere at the moment. Fortunately, I do have. I'm very pleased to announce that Alex Dwyer is lucky enough to win this month's prize. He was 3rd overall, but was the highest position paid up entrant, so he gets this month's prize. So congratulations, Alex. Alex is having a cracking season at the moment. He's 4th overall in MTAG FPL to Pete Steinfort, who's got a pretty solid lead of 25 points right now. Some people might remember that Pete finished 3rd overall last year, so again, very consistent. As far as the MTAG hosts go, Scotty Johnson, he's 8th overall in MTAG FPL, whilst Jesse's 18th. I'm in 44th. Colby's 52nd. Killian, 64th. Sorry, mate. Damo, 111th. And George bringing up the rear on 119th. So, still plenty of FPL to come. But, yeah, it's pretty hard to come back once you're that far.
I got so excited when I saw Juan got 2 goals as well, because I was convinced I had him on my draft team as well, on my fantasy team, and then I actually realized that he was on my other fantasy team and not the one that I actually care about.
It's such a problem with that. I always get excited when someone scores, and then I realize, they're in my other team.
Yeah, which I don't care
about. Yeah. I do want to give a shout out to Killer, your FBL team name as well, Islam the Sommelier, which I really like that.
A French twist.
Yeah. Look, all right, next on to Champions League and Europa League match day 2. So, look, a couple of big fixtures here, big results as well. As I mentioned at the very top, Real Madrid, they hosted Sheriff Tiraspol and with Sebastian Till and, bear with me here for a second, Yasurbek Yakshiboev They both scored a goal each for Sheriff Tiraspol to give Sheriff a dream start to their Champions League group stage debut, defeating Real Madrid at the Bernabeu. So pretty incredible result for them. Leaves them on 6 points, but I'll tell you what, I don't think anyone, probably not on this pod, would have expected Sheriff to have gotten the result at the Bernabeu.
The only thing I've got to say about this game was I think it was the Sheriff coach said that all he had to say was there was namely one person named Dirk Kuyt who said there's no place for Sheriff in the Champions League.
Oh,
and he's like, this result is what I have to say to you, Dirk.
Yes, just injected into my veins. I think it was also Florentino Perez not that long ago was saying that no one watches the group stages as well, and that they're just a waste of time, and you should just basically have a Super League and so on and so forth. So again, some more content that it just sort of cures all of the world's ills.
I think another interesting stat from this game was Real Madrid's net worth is more than the GDP of the region that Sheriff comes from, which they are an independent region of Moldova, and the net worth of Real Madrid, something like that. And then the net worth of Real Madrid is more than the GDP of that place. So that's another interesting stat.
I've got to say, probably the most interesting thing that's come out of them being in the Champions League is that I feel like everyone now is an expert when it comes to Transnistria.
Yeah, I know, right? They've done a lot for the independent area of Transnistria, however you pronounce it.
I feel like it's a real it should be a what's it called, an Anthony Bourdain like episode where you go there and you eat some sort of cabbage stew with a bunch of like random families and chefs and stuff. Anyway, looking forward to that one on SBS soon. Next up as well, which Damo, I think you've already kind of alluded to a little bit, was PSG hosting Manchester City. Pep again was thwarted by Messi, who scored his first PSG goal after Idrissa Gueye had opened the scoring for the Parisians. This is just the epitome of that game where you just hope that both teams lose, because I think unless you're a fan of either team, and let's face it, there aren't many of them, you really hate both of these teams. So,
well, I think this was the most expensive game in the history of football. Both starting 11s were worth more than €1 billion. So, and then you include the however many hundreds of millions worth of players were on the bench. There was probably €3.5 million worth of players involved in that game, which is wild.
One thing I do want to mention before we move on, though, about this game was everyone was absolutely frothing Messi's goal. And I know Messi did run 60 meters unopposed, but that had to have been the most overrated goal. Like, it's a good finish, but he hasn't beaten anyone. I don't think he's really done much apart from it's a nice finish. If anything, was it Hakimi? Hakimi's run around the outside of Messi to take away, I can't remember who the City left back was. It might have been Cancelo or it might have even been Walker. That is the real sort of man of the match for this moment. It's that was just an absolute lung-busting run where he's not expecting to get the ball. In fact, he doesn't want the ball, and all he's doing is creating space and taking a defender away. So, in that moment, probably has just justified his transfer fee alone for the season. So good for him. Juve, they hosted Chelsea, and although Alonso's had a pretty decent start to the season, didn't have his best game here for Chelsea, and pretty much all over the socials in the aftermath of this game was that he's finished for the season, and we're likely to see Ben Chilwell just return
at least until midway through December.
Yeah,
when he comes back and he's brilliant again.
Yeah, but look, it was a bit of, I guess, probably a frustrating game for Chelsea. Obviously, they started off the season quite well. Looked like they're in control of a lot of games, but it felt like they hit a bit of a speed hump here, and Juventus obviously got the result. So and good for them. Next up, Benfica, they hosted Barcelona, and obviously this is a very different Barcelona to the one that we've seen in previous years. Obviously no Messi, but just obviously we saw a bunch of players leaving over the summer, and this has shades for me of the Man United in the aftermath of Fergie leaving. That there's just a very different aura around this team, and it's happened so quickly. And I remember thinking, well, I think I might have even said it on the pod, that I wouldn't be surprised if Barcelona don't make Champions League next year. I think at this point they're going to be lucky if they qualify out of the group, because I think they've lost both games. And there were plenty of chirpy West Ham fans on the socials on Friday morning looking forward to playing Barcelona in the Europa League next round. But I've got to say, at this point, I can't see Barcelona making it into the Europa League even. So it's pretty grim times, I guess, for Barcelona. And I think
if you finish fourth in your Champions League group, do you join the Conference League?
Ooh. I think not. I think you're just out. I'm pretty sure you have to qualify third.
Third
then
place
if you're
from
knocked
Europa
out,
League joins Conference League.
Yeah,
Maybe
I
it
think
works that way.
I think you can still drop down from the Champions League into the Conference League, because let's face it, they still want to try and funnel all of those trophies towards Champions League playing teams at the end of the day. So a little bit disappointing, but yeah, that's.
I think you made a point about Barca maybe not even qualifying for Champions League next year. I mean, the smack bang in the middle of the table right now, the lower half of the table in Spain, they could be in line for a huge points deduction in La Liga due to finances. There's something like now there's something like negative $500 million in net worth, the club. So they're in a really bad spot. And
club's going to be lucky if they make it out of this, right?
Exactly. You know, it's not out of the realms that Barcelona could very much have to declare bankruptcy. And I think La Liga rules that's a 20-point deduction. So it could really do damage to Barcelona for a long, long time, far more so than obviously the situation at Man United, where they were always still one of the richest clubs in the world despite their poor form.
Unreal. Moving on, though, Manchester United, they had a rerun of last year's Europa League final playing against Villarreal. A late Cristiano Ronaldo goal was enough to give Manchester United all 3 points. But an actual Cristiano Ronaldo moment in this one. So, yeah, good for them. Moving on to the Europa League now, though, there's really only three results that are probably noteworthy for the pod at the moment. One of those was West Ham again they hosted Rapid Vienna in London, and the West Ham train rolls on with goals from Benrahma and Declan Rice. So full points from those two matches that they've played in the Europa League. So looking really good in that competition. And Postecoglou and Tam Rajic, Celtic, they got absolutely battered against Leverkusen, who we were just talking about before. The Ange-Mobile seems to be running in the wrong gear at the moment. Celtic drew 1-1 with Dundee last weekend, and then got absolutely spanked this midweek against Leverkusen. So bit grim times, I guess, for him, and I guess he's just got to hold on and hope that he doesn't get sacked before he can sort of get everything in place and get this Celtic team playing how he wants them to play. Finally, Leicester, who we probably otherwise normally would have previewed their match tonight, but they played against Legia Warsaw as well, and that didn't really go their way either. They ended up going down 1-0 away to Warsaw. So again, not a great result for them either. But look, boys, unfortunately,
about that. Sorry, just to add on that last game, a fun fact or something funny about it was that Legia Warsaw actually started selling commemorative T-shirts of the win with the Warsaw versus Leicester City and the date. And I think the player who actually scored the winning goal appeared in his post-match interview wearing that shirt. So they were pretty quick, fresh off the printing press. And literally 20 minutes after the game was played, he was wearing a T-shirt commemorating the win, which is quite funny.
Love it. Love it.
And I think always one of the highlights of Legia playing in Europe is their fans and the kind of the tifos they put together pre-game. And I don't know if you guys saw the pictures or videos of their one for this game, but it was pretty incredible. And their ultras obviously have their issues, but some of the displays they can put on are pretty impressive. And this was second to none.
Very good. All right, boys, that pretty much wraps things up for this week. Next week, obviously, there's international window. So with the Socceroos playing on Friday morning and Tuesday night Australian time, means that we're going to be recording on Wednesday night. So looking forward to talking some more Socceroos next week, or actually the week after next week. You know what I mean? In 10 days' time, we're doing a pod. That's all you need to know. Yeah. All right, that's enough for this week, though. Until next week, enjoy the football.